Hi guys, and welcome back to Is It Worth It Reviews. Today we are going to talk about a DAC coming from SMSL and from their latest RAW series, which has been really nice and great value so far. But today we are talking about RAW Pro DAC1, which is the priciest and best standalone DAC from the RAW series so far. And this standalone DAC means that it doesn't have a headphone amplifier on board or anything else. It's simply a good old standalone DAC. But it actually has very rich set of connectivity and features. So in the back you can find optical toslink, coaxial SPDIF, then AES EBU, and even I2S. USB comes in two different variations. One is more modern USB-C port, and the other one bigger, older USB-B port, which I personally prefer because of its physical robustness. And also because if you have been an audiophile for some time now, you probably have a few decent USB cables that end with this USB-B connection, and you might want to use them. So having an option to select between USB-C and USB-B is great, in my opinion. When it comes to outputs, we have both single-ended RCAs and balanced XLRs. In the front, it's a typical affair, one volume knob that doubles as a button, color display, and quite rich UI that lets you tinker with several different things, like very normal ones, PCM digital filters, or different sound colors, which is something that SMSL has been doing for some time now. So if you follow SMSL DACs, nothing new there really. And one last thing, analog outputs are variable, so you can attenuate the volume using volume knob or a small remote control that is also provided. So it is very rich connectivity, very rich functionality, like we came to expect from these modern DACs. But because this is not just some general purpose electronics channel, we will not hang talking about specs and features and bells and whistles, because we are audiophiles and we want to know how it performs, and even more than that, how it compares to some of the closest competitors on the market. So let's start. Now, I forgot to mention that in the intro, but RAW Pro DAC1 costs $699 US. And as you would expect from a modern $699 US DAC, it sounds really revealing. It has great resolution, great precision, and just detail retrieval. Higher frequencies in general are filled to the brim with the smallest, huskiest, tiniest detailing. If something happened in front of the microphone, you're definitely going to hear it with this DAC. So highly revealing sounding DAC. It's also very dynamically, especially in terms of microdynamics, it's a lively, snappy sounding DAC. It has sparkle, it has good attack, and it's just jumpy and lively sounding one. But then, if we're speaking about tonality, this DAC sounds more fast, precise, quick on its feet, very quick, but it's on a leaner side of things. Now, I know that some reviewers call that very neutral, but to my ears, and when I think about all of the DACs on the market and how warm, full, and full-bodied they can be, and on the other spectrum, how sharp and even annoyingly sharp and too edgy some DACs can be, this one is mostly neutral, but leaning towards this high-resolution, high-speed, but leaner, quicker sounding DAC. It does not offer much in terms of tone full bodiness and just big dynamic swings, big slams. And that is the same kind of tonality that you would expect from Gustards at this price point, or Matrix Audio, or Toppings, for example. So very quick, very resolving sound, very high resolution, but when it comes to sounding just very full-bodied or warm rich in terms of like very rich mid-range tone timbre, that is not that kind of sound. Which leads me to a few comparisons, so we can actually assess how good it really performs for its price. And the first of these comparisons was with Topping D70 Pro Octo. This is a really well-balanced sounding DAC. It doesn't lean towards too much of high frequencies or too much edginess, but it also doesn't lean towards too much warmth and gooiness or anything like that. And around this price, it has been my go-to reference to compare other DACs to for some time now. So when you compare them directly, D70 Pro Octo does sound a bit thicker and just a bit fuller in the mid-bass and mid-range and also bass. It also sounds a bit softer with quick transients and with tiniest of details. They're just a bit blurrier and hazier than with SMSL RAW Pro DAC1. But as I said, it does sound thicker, like acoustic mass is a bit greater and fuller and slightly warmer. It's a small difference, but it is there, and if you have a transparent system, you can notice that. But also that comes at the expense of that finest resolution and quickest, snappiest transients that are super clear and even better separated that SMSL Pro DAC1 can do. It just sounds quicker on its feet, more nimble, the bass line is a bit faster, precision of all tones across the frequency spectrum is slightly bigger, and it just sounds a bit snappier. Also, another difference is that Topping D70 Octo sounds just ever so slightly narrower. And this RAW Pro DAC1 is a bit wider sounding. There's just a bit more airiness around your soundstage, and it extends slightly better to the left and to the right. So technically speaking, I do think that SMSL RAW Pro DAC1 is a slightly more resolving, slightly quicker, snappier sounding DAC. But Topping D Pro Octo sounds warmer and a bit thicker and just a bit richer in the mid-range. So if you prefer that, you might prefer D70 Octo. If you like something that sounds very resolving, very modern, quick and snappy, you would probably prefer RAW Pro DAC1. So, while D70 Pro Octo couldn't fully match the resolution of this one, let's see, what about Centaurus? Like a newly released, I reviewed it some 5-6 days ago, you can watch that review if you want. But Centaurus is also pricier at $999 US. Feature-wise, we have basically all the same stuff. But when you compare their sound, I have to say that Centaurus now fully matches just the speed, resolution, and how precise and how revealing everything sounds. It does that better than D70 Pro Octo, and it fully matches RAW Pro DAC1 in that regard. But the thing is that Centaurus lacks a bit of just snappiness and energy and sounds a bit less dynamic and a bit less punchy. It's a small difference, but you can hear in a very good system that it is, dynamically speaking, just a bit more laid back, a bit flatter sounding. And also at moments I feel that RAW Pro DAC1 once again creates a bit wider soundstage, and also from time to time tones jump out a bit more, like they're a bit livelier, they come a bit closer to you, and I think it does sound a bit more attractive and a bit more engaging than Centaurus. And while those differences are really not big at all, these are like 95% similar sounding DACs. But it's easy to notice these differences because they actually share the same tonality and same sound signature. And when they have all of that pretty much the same, it's easy to pick out the one that is doing dynamics and soundstage slightly better, and that's, in my opinion, SMSL RAW 1 DAC Pro. And given that it's also more affordable, $300 more affordable, I think this particular comparison is over. And for my last comparison, my current favorite below $1,000, still Topping D90 III Discrete. In that last review of Topping Centaurus, I shared that I preferred its more laid-back, softer, but kind of fuller tonality. And it's basically same here, because SMSL RAW Pro DAC1 sounds very, very similar to Centaurus, just that one smidge better. It's very comparable to Centaurus. And in a direct comparison to D90 III Discrete, I prefer D90 III Discrete because it has fuller bodied sound signature. Tones do sound more three-dimensional and more palpable. Soundstage is very similar, left and right, but D90 III Discrete has better back-to-front depth. It feels like it's starting closer to you, so leading vocals and leading instruments that are recorded very close in the mix, they feel closer to you, more in your room, like they stepped forward. And they also sound a bit bigger and, as I said, a bit more three-dimensional in space. But the things that are recorded to be backwards, laid back in the background, they're equally deep and equally back as with SMSL RAW Pro DAC1. So in absolute terms, depth of the soundstage is not greater with the D90 III Discrete, but given that leading ones are closer to you, there's just greater gradation between front and back, and overall length of the soundstage depth, does that make sense, is greater with D90 III Discrete. Another difference is that D90 III Discrete actually sounds a bit softer, a bit smoother, and it does present edges and quick transients in a bit softer way. Now, this is a thing where I have to say this. I do believe that if you have higher end, higher quality hi-fi setup, you will prefer D90 III Discrete for its more natural, smoother, yet slightly more three-dimensional and more palpable presentation. On the other hand, if you are more on a budget side with speakers that are maybe bigger but of a lesser qualities and they have a bit of fat in their sound, especially if your room acoustics is not helping but adding a bit of fat and muddiness, you might actually prefer this leaner but quicker and slightly high frequency oriented sound of SMSL RAW Pro DAC1. So I'm not excluding the possibility that in some systems you might even prefer SMSL RAW DAC1, but I think that the better, the more transparent your system is, the better acoustic in your room is, the less problems you have with fattiness and muddiness of the bass and the mid bass, the bigger are chances that you, like me, are actually going to prefer the D90 III Pro Discrete. But once we take into account that SMSL RAW Pro DAC1 is once again $300 more affordable than D90 III Discrete, I think it deserves high praise and high scores. It's just a very, very open, revealing, precise sounding DAC. Oh, one last thing that it's not a direct comparison, but I wanted to mention. I don't have older SMSL SU10 with me anymore, but that one was definitely softer, warmer, more relaxed sounding. Also a bit hazier, a bit muddier, not as precise, not as clean and as high resolution as this RAW Pro DAC1, but definitely more relaxed. It's a bit of a weird situation to be at for SMSL because for some time they used to make warmer sounding DACs. And for example, SU10 was much more similar to Chord Mojo 2 that is also softer, warmer, tonally richer, especially in the mid-range sounding DAC. And SMSL SU10 was in that camp. But RAW Pro DAC1 is in this different camp with more precise, leaner but quicker, speedier sound that resembles more to Matrix Audio, Gustard's, Eversolo DAC Z8 and things like that. So don't just be like, oh, SMSL has that house sound, I love it, I'll buy this one. Their sound signature, at least with this DAC, is changed, and some people will love that, some will not. But I hope that after my description and these few comparisons, now you have a pretty good idea of how it sounds, and you can make a good informed decision. Would you like this kind of sound? And would it suit the rest of your hi-fi setup and just your taste? And if you think it would match your taste and your system, this is a highly recommended DAC with some great qualities, some fantastically transparent sound, and even more importantly, at a really, really good price. And that would be all for today, guys. Hope you liked the video. See you next time.